What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video where we're going to look at some incredible puzzles. I've got two that I want to show you. This one's kind of like a warm-up puzzle. It's not super difficult, but it has a really nice idea. And then the next one is kind of the main course, and it's pretty amazing. It was mind-boggling to me. So let's go ahead and get started with this one, and then I'll show you the next one after that. All right, so in this position, white is going forward. These pawns are going this way. Black is coming down this way. It's white to play and win. And before I say too much, I'll give you guys a chance to pause the video and try to find the winning move and the winning idea for white. So go ahead and do that, and then we will talk about the solution. All right, if you had a chance to do that, the first thing that I want to point out here is that if these pawns get traded, and then the knight somehow sacrifices itself for this pawn, we would end up with a king, a rook, and a bishop against a king and a rook. So it would look something like this. And this should always be a draw if black knows what they're doing, unless they kind of run their king into a corner or does something wrong. This is going to be a draw, okay? So we don't really want to just trade the pawns. So e7 is the first move. Now, the first point is that, yes, our bishop is hanging and black can take it, but that doesn't really help them stop our pawn, and we're going to get a queen, right? Also, the knight is not in a good position to stop this. It needs two moves to be able to do that, so it doesn't have enough time. So the only move that black could try initially would be rook to e6, but that fails immediately to the bishop check, the bishop fork, and black loses the rook. We get the queen, easy win. So what black does instead is play the move king to g4 check. And the point is, by moving the king to g4, now it's controlling that f5 square. So after we move our king to get out of the check, black can play rook e6, and guess what? We don't have the fork anymore. Black would just simply take our bishop, okay? So this is kind of the tricky line and the tricky idea behind this position. So if you haven't, if you didn't see it before, I'll give you another chance to pause. What do we play here as white to win the game? All right, if you had a chance to look at that, the move is rook to e2, which at first glance looks really ridiculous because there's nothing defending our rook. And the way that rooks work is if it stays on the same file, it's still going to be stopping the pawn from becoming a queen, and we just lost our rook. So why would we want to do that? Because we need the rook to get on this side of the e4 square so that we can play bishop to e4 and give up yet another piece. And the point here is that if we get a queen, it doesn't matter what else we lose in the process. We're going to be able to win. But also, black can't take it because of this fork. This pawn fork basically just wins the rook. And then, again, there's no way for black to stop the pawn. And so, you know, black could do something else, like move the knight or move the rook, or I don't know, but we're going to get a queen, and it's going to be a win. So, really nice idea. The double, piece sacrifice, sacrificing the rook, followed by the bishop, all because we have this pawn fork set up, which black had to put the king there, right, to stop bishop f5 earlier. And so now you can kind of see how everything fits together to be a win for white. So, like I said, that was just a little warm-up, and now let's jump over to the main puzzle. All right, so here we go. We can see white has the two bishops. Black has only one bishop, but a whole bunch of random pawns. And black, of course, is going down the board this way. So the first question that I have for you, before I say anything, do you think this is a win for white, a win for black, or a draw? What do you think the outcome of this position should be? Go ahead and think through that, and then we'll talk about it. All right, if you had a chance to come up with an idea, this is actually a win for white. And this is interesting because normally a king and two bishops against a king and let's just say one bishop. So let me come over here for a second. I have an example for you. Like this position, this is a draw. Okay, there's no way to force checkmate when black has this bishop that's going to be kind of constantly annoying you. And if you ever trade these off, it's also just a draw. And so this is always going to be a draw. But in this particular position, the bishop that black has is stuck, right? It's stuck in the corner. It's not doing anything unless black can figure out a way to move the pawn forward. But it's white's turn, and of course, white's probably not going to allow black to just get a queen, right? So the question is, what do you do if you're white? All right, so the first move is bishop to e3 check. This one I think is pretty obvious because you can't allow, like we said, black to get a queen. By playing bishop to e3 check, you can see how the bishops are crisscrossing and it forces the king over here. Okay, that's great. But now, what's going on? Well, normally, if we did this and black didn't have all these pawns, let's just say, this position would be a stalemate because where's black going to move? Nowhere, right? But it's not stalemate if you have other pieces that you can move, and black does have some pawns that they can move. So we can use this to our advantage to bring our king into the game. The big question, though, is where should we go with our king? We only really have 3 options that look like they make sense. Which one should we play? So go ahead and pause, think through that, and then we'll talk about the best move. All right, guys, well, if you had a chance to analyze that, that was actually a trick question. The move that we should play is not with the king at all. It is with this bishop over here. I know I totally led you down the wrong path, so if you didn't find bishop h6, well, that's my fault, I guess. The move is bishop h6, and the point is we don't want that pawn to move yet. Okay, we're trying to save that pawn for later. We want black to move this pawn, and if you're wondering why, it'll make sense in just a bit. So let's keep going forward. So black's only move, remember the king is stuck, so the only move for black is to push this pawn. And now I'm going to ask you the same question again, and this time it is a king move, okay, not a trick question, but again, where do we move the king? Here, here, or here? Well, if you had a chance to look at that, the correct move is actually king to e7, and there's a really fascinating reason for why we're going this way as opposed to coming over here. Remember, we're not really in a hurry to take these pawns because actually those pawns are what we need, right? So that we don't have a stalemate. So we're not really in a rush to do that. So that's one thing. And then the other reason you're going to see in just a second. So we move here. Black pushes the pawn because what else can they do? We move here. Black pushes the pawn. And now black has threatened that it's going to be a stalemate if we don't do something about it. And now we can see the reason for running our king over here. We play the move king to g5, which blocks our bishop, so it's no longer a stalemate. Okay, so we're using our king to allow the king a space to go, right? So they move here. And now one of these puzzles I showed you before was the staircase maneuver where the queen kind of like went down a ladder almost, like, right? That was a really fun one, at least in my opinion. We're going to do the same thing here, but with our king, okay? So we're going to go check, which forces the king to go back. But now we have to be careful for a stalemate. So we're going to go boop. And we're going to just do this little dance with our king. Check. Over. Check. And you see how we basically moved our king all the way from here to here. And all black could do was move back and forth. Okay, and that's important because we still need this pawn for some extra time later. Okay. So we finally have made some progress here. What do we do now? Because we can't keep going with our king, right? Or we stalemate black. This is a stalemate again. So what do we do here? Well, the move is bishop to d2. Basically, we have to allow this pawn now to go down here, right? Which is kind of what I was saying. So black is going to start pushing the pawn because if they can get rid of that quickly, it's just going to be a stalemate. King to d1, we're setting up, and you're going to see why this is important in just a second. h4. We take this pawn, h3, bring the king up, h2, and now is when we need to deliver the checkmate, or at least get close to delivering the checkmate. So the bishop goes back here, threatening to take the pawn, but also, if we take the pawn, we open up a space over here for the king, right? So that's important. Black gets the queen. We take it. The king goes up here. Bishop to d5 check. King goes back. And now it's actually mate in 4. If you'd like to pause and think through, how do we checkmate black from this position? We've basically accomplished what we wanted. We used the pawns that black had to get our king into the ideal position. And now it's just a question of how do we checkmate black without stalemating him? So mate in 4, it's not super easy, but it's really, really satisfying if you're able to find this one. So go ahead and take a look and see if you can figure it out. White to play and mate in 4. All right, well, if you're ready to see the solution, and by the way, I did not find this myself. Just seeing the answer was like, wow. We play the move bishop to a3. Now, the first point is that we're allowing the pawn to move forward. Okay, great. And now here's the really tricky part. We play the move bishop to b3. We allow the black pawn to take, because by playing bishop b3, what we're doing is just kind of waiting. The king is stuck, and so the only thing black can do is move this pawn. And now we go all the way back to h7. Actually, you can technically go to any of these squares, but this one looks the coolest to me, which again, because of the way we've positioned our king and bishop, the only move that black has is a2. And look at this amazing checkmate. Bishop to h7 checkmate. I mean, how funny is that, right? All these pieces played a role in checkmating the king, right? Even the pawn that, you know, was a doubled pawn, came up the board, captured here, and here we are with a checkmate. How fascinating is that? Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you're new to the channel, I do videos like this every couple of days. Lots of exciting puzzles. I have a whole database that I found and lots of resources of where these puzzles come from, and so lots and lots of them. I'm not going to run out anytime soon, so make sure you subscribe, hit the like button if you got something from this, and I'll see you guys next time. Stay sharp, play smart, and take care.